necessarily intentional. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's subconscious, but is there an imbalance of power because of money?
Ooh, power dynamics.
Really close friend of mine. I'm going to give a shout out to Bev. Bev is a couples therapist in Texas. Bev is amazing. And I've learned a lot from Bev. And one thing she said to me at one point that, again, I've told a lot of people about is you have to be a student of your partner. Money is not about money.
No.
So a lot of this isn't about that. It's about creating something wonderful with somebody else that is special between the two of you. You got to focus on each other. Money is just a component of it. So keep your eye on the prize.
Welcome to Critical Thinking Required, hosted by LBW. This podcast is intended for free thinkers, entrepreneurs, and knowledge seekers. Join us as we discuss relevant financial topics, explore with guests their financial journeys, and engage with experts in industries such as space, media and entertainment, real estate, and many more. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Welcome to Critical Thinking Required. I'm your host today, Kennidy, and we're back again with Dan. So today we are continuing our series on relationships and finance, or finance and relationships. So far we've talked about how to discuss finances with your kiddos as the parent, how to discuss finances with your parent as the kiddo. And then now, finally, we're going to be talking about how to discuss finances with your romantic partner.
This is part 2 of the episode.
So that's kind of just the start of like building those things. It kind of does blend in with managing because this is all kind of very messy in nature. But then we talk about managing, like we've joined finances or we have not joined finances.
The decision's been made regardless.
It has. And along in conjunction with that, we may have assumed things like,
what about debt?
What
is going on with debt? Who's got debt? Is it my debt now?
Maybe.
In
some debt, that's the case.
Yeah.
Right. Some debt, it's not the case. Like if it's student loan debt, for example, that's not the case. If a person, student loan debt, funny and not funny, if you want to get rid of that, you have to die. And that's how that works. But it doesn't transfer to that other partner, typically speaking, depending on the student loan debt. But it may not, right? Then again, or is it credit card debt? And it may depend on what state you're living in as well. But understanding what that debt is that you're assuming.
Probably also how your partner feels about debt. You should probably have that conversation before the debt is together and joined, perhaps.
That's right.
Because if they have a lot of debt anxiety, it's probably something you should discuss ahead of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how do they manage it? Is it something that maybe they have debt, but they don't love it? Is it better than debt? There's never really great debt, but better than debt. I mean, I don't love debt. So, understanding their adversity towards something like that is really pretty critical.
I feel like Nathaniel would say, leverage your debt.
In a calculated, effective way, but correct.
There you go.
He certainly would do that. So, and then comes the big one about managing stuff. So at this point in time, we kind of know what the scenario looks like. We're communicating about it. We understand each other's feelings about debt, money, families' roles, what this means to us from a love language standpoint. Like the building blocks, they are there. Now we just have to build the rest of it and maintain it.
Manage and maintain.
Right. For the greater good. And so defining roles.
Yeah.
That's what comes next.
Yeah. Is there one person in charge of finances? Are you tag teaming it? Is there one person who does one thing and the other person does another?
Are these responsibilities short-term, long-term, temporary? Not. From a professional standpoint, I think it would be interesting to get Tim's opinion on this too. I think he would agree with me. I do think that it is helpful if somebody takes a bit more of a lead than someone else, whoever that happens to be. But I do think both people can be involved, and also one person doesn't have to be involved. That's absolutely okay. You mentioned generation differences too.
Yeah.
Older generations, we have seen a lot of this where one person typically the male, has done X, Y, and Z if it's a male-female relationship. And that's fine as long as things have been transparent and communication has been into play and there's been methods to transfer or understand things. When that doesn't happen, I mean, it's a real disaster.
Things get messy.
They do.
Get
So
real messy.
they do. And we also see this too in business owner situations,
Mhm.
big time, right? Just understanding what's happening in the business and are they comfortable with the business. I think we mentioned this maybe in one of the other podcasts recently too, but like we have a great client, a newer client who has like 90% of their assets involved in the business.
Mhm.
Kudos. They have busted their butt to get there.
Mhm.
My spouse, though, isn't involved in the day-to-day stuff. He feels really comfortable with 90% of their assets being in this business because he knows it like the back of the hand.
Mhm.
He didn't realize that she didn't. And it's not a trust thing. And trust is really important when it comes to money.
Absolutely.
And trust is really important when it comes to relationships,
Yeah.
especially this relationship. And it doesn't come like that. And you know what? Maybe it shouldn't. Like, you should work into it. She trusts him entirely, but she also feels a little lost. And if something happens to him, she has no idea what to do, right? It's something we're working on now. And that's a really scary, uncomfortable situation.
Absolutely.
It's not about him. It's about after him,
Yeah.
or if something were to happen, and understand what that looks like. So
It's about security.
so in this case, like a business succession concept makes a lot of sense, or family meetings make a lot of sense, right? I really liked the idea that my ex and I had ability to see each other's assets, and we always spoke very freely about it. And the funny thing is, we rarely had any issues when it came to money.
Yeah.
Nothing. Because it's about creating that awareness and
Mhm.
sharing that awareness. It's not necessarily about who's doing what most of the time, but that awareness piece is really important.
Communication.
Communication, right?
All comes back to that C word, doesn't it?
Yeah. And one person maybe doesn't lead on the money, but they lead on other things.
Sure.
Maybe a lot of other things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's the dissemination of roles. You just gotta figure out what works best for you and that you both are on the same, or that you all are on the same page.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think especially not only like just with like assets and stuff like that, but like what about like financial like goals, like what if you have kids? College planning, if that's important, or I'm assuming most people want to retire. So what does that look like in terms of y'all as a couple?
Not everybody. Nathaniel doesn't want to retire.
Yeah, true. My dad.
But most people, I want to retire. So
Same. Same.
We're going to retire.
I would like it.
But some people, like, what does that actually mean? Are people making equal contributions to retirement?
Yeah.
Are they making equal contributions to college planning stuff? If they have to do that, do they need to? Should they? I mean, is one person making a lot more money and therefore they're more comfortable to do X, Y, and Z? Are we talking percentages here? Are we
equitable contributions?
Yep.
What is it going to be?
Is one thing more important than the other person? So that they really want to do this, and it may not be as important to the other partner, but should the other partner then be like, okay, well, let's allow that, no problem, because this is important to my partner, and therefore I need to be at least open to hearing about it, and they should be, maybe. Yeah.
Relationship tips with Dan.
I don't know if I'm really the expert in any means whatsoever, but nonetheless, it's what we see, right?
Sure.
Yeah. And and I think in conjunction with those goals too, there needs to be conversations again about how do you protect these things. Plenty of people that won't put any effort into that. Are there proper estate planning things in place?
Shout out to our last podcast.
It is. Nice plug, Kennidy. Are things properly insured?
Yeah.
What does do both partners feel secure as to how that's actually happening? Do they understand how that's happening to the point where they feel secure?
Yeah.
What other goals are we looking to plan? I mean, college, sure, it comes up all the time, but yeah.
Want to get married? Do you want to get a new car? House? Want to give to charity?
Do you want to see inheritance? Is that important for your children or heirs to receive inheritance? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Does it make sense? Like we also will see a lot of parents that will basically cut their nose off to give inheritance when we talked about this in another one of these related podcasts too, cut off their nose to help out their kids when they don't need to.
Yeah.
They need it perhaps, and maybe their partner isn't on the same page, and then it creates strife. Doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. I think another thing to keep in mind when it comes to this stuff too is, and it might not come to mind, but what do you want your outward appearance to the public to look like in terms of finances?
That is a big deal. And some people might see that as superficial. It's not necessarily superficial. It can be.
Sure. Yeah.
But we have a lot of clients that work in the field of entertainment, and they have to create an image.
Appearance matters sometimes.
A lot of times that's actually not them. Like it's really funny to see that as you have X, Y, and Z, and they really have zero interest when the doors are closed, but they need to do this because that's part of their job. In all reality, right? Or it might be how they feel good in a different scenario. I mean, I'm not trying to, and Kenny's not either, trying to advocate for someone to be material.
No, but I mean, sometimes things are important to you, and that's just a reality. Like there's no mincing or dicing that. Like if something's important to you, got to communicate it's important to you, and then figure it out.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
It's healthy.
Yeah, she's just got to know these things. Yeah.
And then of course, Kennidy.
Conflict.
Yeah, it doesn't always go smoothly, and sometimes it doesn't. Someone said to me also this year, had a lot of really good tidbits people have thrown me this year particularly, but someone said intimacy over harmony is what they mentioned.
Ooh, could you elaborate on that, Dan?
Yeah, I mean it is it's not always going to be smooth. But what's really important is that you can have that connection and bond, right? And that you can get through what can be tough conversations like this. And sometimes they're going to be. So hopefully that bond and that care for one another and that mutual respect is strong enough that you can deal with a little struggle here or there, right? A non-harmonious situation. But the only way to kind of deal with that is to focus on the intimacy part first. So how do we deal with this kind of conflict, right? Obviously, put yourself in the right mind frame of, I want to hear what my partner has to say about this because I care. Right. And, what do you do if you have disagreements in these areas?
Yeah.
How do you want to handle that? What if there is, which we see often, not necessarily intentional, sometimes it is, sometimes it's subconscious, but is there an imbalance of power because of money?
Ooh, power dynamics.
And we see it all the time, right? Where somebody will, maybe they don't mean to, maybe they do mean to, but they'll use their status or their money to belittle their partner, to feel good about themselves, or to control things they want, as opposed to trying to create an equal playing field.
And I don't think that this is always purposeful. Like I feel like sometimes I've seen this happen, and it's been kind of unconscious from what I can understand. So I think it's just important to maintain awareness.
It is. And recognize that with money comes abilities and optionality, and abilities and optionality and all the other things that come with it can create stress.
And two, that there can be controversy with civility. Like you can have disagreements and have different opinions and different understandings and still come to like have a common purpose or a common like understanding, I guess. I hate to reuse that word like that. But yeah.
And you don't have to create that alone. So a disappointment I've seen is that I know some great therapists. We work with a number of great therapists.
Hey, therapy.
Both personally and professionally. I mean, we're huge advocates, right? Go therapy. But a lot of therapists don't really talk about this money situation, even though it's typically one of the top 2 or 3 leading causes to the people dissolving their marriages.
Throw back to that statistic at the beginning of the pod.
It doesn't get talked about a lot. And there's actually designations from a finance standpoint to focus on a lot of this stuff, which we value here very much.
Yes.
But it should be talked about. I think that it should be something that, again, not taboo. Press with your marriage or your couples counselor. Press with your individual person to understand what this means to you and how someone else might kind of view it, because that stress can be a lot. You don't have to handle it alone.
No.
And sometimes it's not easy initially to talk to your partner about these things because you're worried you're going to F it up because you don't know the greatest avenue to do that.
But I mean, that's like a couple, right? Everything in the beginning is scary. Like the first time you do anything together, it's scary.
That's right.
Just like this conversation. But then like the more you repeat it and we probably recommend repeating it, a routine review, if you will, it gets easier.
That's a great point, Kenny.
Yeah.
To check in on this.
Yeah.
Check in on each other. Check in on your money as well, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Please check. Yes.
And sometimes, too, like this conflict that can be created is coming from good things. It's not necessarily you don't see eye to eye on X, Y, and Z. We see conflict come up because of change of income. Someone has seen a huge increase in pay. And now it's like, what do I do with this money? Which is a good problem to have.
Or the opposite, a loss on a job.
Right.
What do we do now?
How do you support one another?
Yeah.
What does that mean emotionally for this person as well as financially? How do you handle both? How are you going to show up? How do you expect your partner to show up in a situation like this? They might be down, but they still got to be a partner.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, it could be a great thing where you have had a child or 6 and now someone stays home because it does not pay to go out and do that. And maybe your viewpoint is if someone's got to stay home with these kids, they're my kids. I want to be the one that stays home. I mean, right. It's the greatest gift you can get. So what does that look like for finances? And again, this is, we mentioned earlier, could be a shift in how people might value their contributions in the household. Really a great thing, but a change, and change can be tough.
Change is hard.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But I mean, all of these things are to say, so we've outlined 3 what we feel are pretty distinct phases of romantic relationships with finances. But all of this is to say is that these things are very variable. No relationship, my romantic relationships do not look like Dan's romantic relationships and vice versa. And mine don't look like yours out there. They're all going to look a little bit different. We're all going to navigate things a little bit differently because there are all different variables coming into play. So these are some things we think are helpful to consider in terms of romantic relationships and finances. But there are things you're going to run into that we did not cover here, or we didn't even think about covering here. And that's okay.
Or things we just didn't have time because
That's
Nina's going to be knocking on the door saying,
yeah, she's like, get out, go.
You guys take too
Stop
long.
it.
Talk about all your feelings and everything.
Buck up, buttercup.
That's right. That's right. I guess a lasting piece that I'll throw out there, I think that was really well said, Kennidy, is just to kind of keep it simple. Among all these great little things, tidbits that I think we just kind of hear, really close friend of mine, I'm going to give a shout out to Bev. Bev is a couples therapist in Texas. Bev is amazing. And I've learned a lot from Bev. And one thing she said to me at one point that, again, I've told a lot of people about is you have to be a student of your partner. And I think she's 100% right. I always try to keep it in the back of my head. It's really, really easy to forget those kind of things. So if you can just be a student like anything else and keep things in the forefront, I think you go a really long way on caring about the subject matter, your partner. And that also translates here too, right? A lot of this, we've said it, we'll say it again, money is not about money.
No.
So a lot of this isn't about that. It's about creating something wonderful with somebody else that is special between the two of you. You got to focus on each other. Money is just a component of it. So keep your eye on the prize.
Go team. Like and subscribe.
Thank you for taking the time to start your journey of thinking differently and listening to LBW talk about stuff they love. Until next time,